India's electorate is the largest moving force in the democratic world. Their recent election results have analysts rewriting their projections for the region. For over half a century, communist parties maintained a consistent presence in several key Indian states, holding regional power for decades without interruption. For the first time in 59 years, communist parties have been voted out of every single state and union territory government in India. This shift creates a vacuum in the subcontinent's political landscape, providing a data point foreign observers are quickly using to bolster their own arguments. The ripple effects of those Indian ballots hit the United States immediately. Analysts in New York and Washington quickly drew parallels to American domestic policy. Conservative commentators used the result to create a specific contrast. They praised India for moving away from communist governance, while arguing that major American cities are moving in the opposite direction. This narrative has focused heavily on progressive leaders in cities like New York. Figures like Donald Trump frequently apply the communist label to these politicians, citing their stances on wealth distribution as evidence. A regional election in India has become a proxy for the American debate over wealth, taxation, and the limits of state power. At the center of this debate is a specific stance on extreme wealth. Progressive critics argue that the existence of billionaires represents a failure of the economic system to provide for the broader population. By applying heavy wealth and property taxes to the ultra-rich, these leaders aim to pull resources back toward public infrastructure and social equality. Capitalists argue that this approach stifles the competition and innovation that drive an economy forward. They contend that the incentive of extreme wealth is what fuels the creation of new technologies and industries. The question of how to handle the ultra-wealthy has become the dividing line between those following a traditional market model and those pushing for socialist-leaning reforms. China offers a complex variation of this model. Despite its communist foundations, the country has overseen decades of rapid development that rivals the most advanced capitalist nations. Unlike traditional communist regimes, the Chinese state allows private corporations and tech billionaires to flourish, capturing global market share and driving internal growth. However, this wealth comes with a strict ceiling. If a billionaire gains too much influence, the state intervenes with heavy taxes and regulatory pressure to ensure that private power never exceeds government authority. This creates a unique dynamic. India's overall economy is smaller than China's, yet because it lacks those specific state-mandated caps on individual success, it produces the wealthiest person in Asia. The contrast suggests that for a communist party to maintain economic growth in a global market, it must integrate private ownership, or risk the stagnation seen in more rigid systems. Since the early 1990s, the map of global communism has been in steady retreat. Regimes that once covered entire regions have largely disappeared. Today, only 4 nations continue to operate under a centralized communist party: China, Vietnam, North Korea, and Cuba. While China has adapted, others remain isolated. In these states, the lack of private market access has frequently led to economic stagnation and a widening gap between them and the rest of the world. With the recent election results in India removing communist parties from regional governance, the few remaining outposts are facing increased scrutiny from the international community. Cuba is increasingly viewed as the next point of failure. The nation remains economically stagnant, with infrastructure appearing much as it did decades ago. Internal pressures are mounting, poverty is rising, and the absence of political alternatives has led to an increase in anti-government protests, a rare and significant occurrence in such a tightly controlled state. These vulnerabilities are being closely monitored by the United States. Leaders in Washington are already discussing the potential for a popular shift toward a market-based government in Havana. As communist seats in democratic systems are lost at the ballot box, the final rigid regimes are being pushed toward a difficult choice: integrate with the global market or face the consequences of an increasingly fragile domestic economy.